Welcome to Now Innovating, a research to impact series at the University of Calgary. I'm your host, Julia McGregor. This episode, I speak with Dr. Lina Kattan, a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering and a Canada Research Chair in Integrative Transportation Systems through Automation and Connectivity. She is also the Urban Alliance Chair in Transportation Systems and Optimization. The Urban Alliance is a strategic partnership between the City of Calgary and the University of Calgary to enable high-quality research and education by implementing solutions to pressing municipal issues. Lina's transdisciplinary research is leading efforts in emerging transportation solutions to create smart and sustainable cities. Hi, Lina, and welcome to Now Innovating.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julia, for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. I was hoping you could first start off by telling us really about how transportation systems are really key to creating a smart and sustainable city.
Yeah, transportation systems are really the blood vessels of our society. They're, connecting us to our jobs, our institutions, our families. And the transportation systems are responsible for more than 4% of emissions and pollutions and energy consumptions in cities.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And these problems are only expected to grow with increased urbanization and travel demand and e-commerce. And smart mobility, which is a very important part of smart cities, it consists of combining the physical world, like the vehicles, the roads, the transit networks, and the sensors with clean technologies, but with the digital world, such as apps and connectivity and IoT. They promise to reduce congestion and to increase mobility in cities, and for sure with the clean technologies also to reduce emissions.
You yourself, you're a Canada Research Chair in Integrative Transportation Systems through Automation and Connectivity. So I was hoping you'd tell us more about the research areas that you address through your Canada Research Chair.
Yeah, so as you see in the title, we have connected and automated vehicles, and these are also an important part of smart mobility. So CAVs, so I will connect it and autonomous vehicles, I will use the short term CAVs. So there are vehicles that are equipped with sensing technologies, cameras, and they are able to collect data when they travel. At the same time, because of connectivity, they can also talk to other vehicles. So they can, for instance, if one car is in the middle of the bottleneck, it can connect this information to other vehicles upstream. And so the other vehicle can take another route, for instance.
Oh, cool.
And so they're not really simply vehicles. They are sensors, like floating sensors, but also if they receive information, for instance, if a vehicle has to reduce its speed, like we have with police car, when the police car is traveling, you see how vehicles around the police car, they slow down. So the CAVs, they can also, in busy traffic, they can influence if they have certain penetration rate, of course. So if we have a good number, I would say 30% and more. So they can also influence the driving behavior of vehicles around them. So this means that CAVs are not simple cars. They are cars that can talk to each other. They can negotiate. They can even bargain. Ooh. And they can decide on how to manipulate the traffic stream in order to benefit maybe the entire freeway or the entire network and so on. So my research focus on how CAVs are going to be influencing our traffic, but also how we can introduce them in order to meet the societal goals of sustainability and equity and increase mobility.
It's so frustrating as a driver too, and you're like, why are we not moving? It's just people just not knowing.
Yeah, these are called phantom jumps.
Thank you. I was like, what's the term? With your research, can you give us some examples of transportation solutions that you have developed through either your CRC or through the CREATE Integrated Infrastructure for Sustainable Cities program, which was NSERC funded?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I can think of one recent publication that just came out in September and it was co-authored with my previous PhD students and postdoc, and she's now a professor in sustainable systems engineering.
Amazing.
So in this research, we envisioned a traffic that is self-organizing traffic. And we borrowed tools from complexity theory, such as game theory and self-organization, in order to design micro rules for vehicles. The vehicles can engage in games, and they can do coalitions or decide not to be in the coalition and decide on their lane assignment and speed in order to co-create a more harmonious traffic. Maybe I can give you an example. Like sometimes you can look at the driver on your right and signal if you can squeeze in front, right? Mm-hmm. But CAVs are going to be robots. But with this connectivity, maybe in the future, passengers in these CAVs can reveal their trip destinations, urgency and purpose. They can be more socially aware, and so maybe a driver who is going shopping can just like simply lead the way to someone who is urgently needing to catch a flight, for instance. And what is nice about these coalition games, they're like, although we only tested them on traffic in the context of traffic management, but they can be applied for other urban systems. So, for instance, how we manage our grid, and so how people can cooperate in order to come with better solution, or even the water use and so on.
Oh, cool. And I'm just picturing like the next Disney film of the Cars franchise being like having passengers and telling them how to use a CAV focus will be the next Cars movie. That's really cool about your research. Thank you for showing that example. And so, Lina, you're also the Urban Alliance Chair in Transportation Systems Optimization. And like through that, I know that chair is like helped partially supported by the City of Calgary itself. So like, how do you really respond to the needs of the city through your research?
Yeah, as you said, like the Urban Alliance Chair focuses mainly on more applied research that somehow meets the City of Calgary research needs. I can give an example of a recent Urban Alliance grant I'm leading with 4 other professors from transportation, and it's in the form of MyTax. So it's a MyTax cluster grant. And we are mainly focusing on transit. So it's with Calgary Transit. And we are looking at how we can leverage the transit data that we have nowadays. So, like most city transit vehicles are equipped with GPS, and we can track their location. And at the same time, they're equipped with automated passenger counters, so we can count passengers boarding and alighting, and so how we can leverage these data that we're collecting and with also technologies and new services such as micromobility in order to improve the transit system. So we're focusing on 4 themes. One theme looking at how we can improve transit travel time, like for instance through providing transit signal priority, and also how we can improve the transit riders experience by deciding like what transit stops to improve, for instance, and what amenities we need to provide at the transit stops to improve the transit riders experience. Right. The second theme looks at the predicting the travel time of transit in order to improve the real-time transit information provision. Another theme looks at how we can use machine learning, AI, in order to develop some machine vision to improve the enforcement of transit-only lanes in the city. And the last one looks at the integration with other modes. So mainly looking at the first mile, last mile solution through e-scooters or e-bikes, or in the future, maybe shared CAVs.
Very cool. And like with the MyTax program too, like I assume there's a lot of like training of, highly qualified personnel in that too. So that's really amazing that they get to engage in all that research with you.
Yeah. All the students, they have to spend some time with Calgary Transit. So we have 9 students working with Calgary Transit.
Wow.
on these research teams.
What a great experience. And to speak from your own experience too, like, so you're so well versed in like all this work that you're doing. It's really impressive stuff. I was curious like how a transdisciplinary approach and collaboration with various partners really is key to innovation.
Yeah, so like most of the problems that I mentioned, like most of the city problems like pollutions, congestions, climate change, these fall under the categories of wicked problems. So this means these problems are really intertwined and interrelated and interdependent. And these are characteristics of complex systems, and they are created and consciously recreated through the ongoing decisions and the choices of numerous players operating and acting in the system. And when I say numerous players, it can be like the government, like showing like some policies. It can be, like our choices as individuals and end users. So this means transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach is needed because these problems cannot be solved in isolation. There's no single discipline that can solve these problems, or not only single perspective.
Right.
So you need really to incorporate multiple disciplines and multiple stakeholders' input, even communities, in order to come with a holistic and systematic solutions.
So with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they're an urgent call for action for all countries with a 15-year agenda culminating in 2030. So Lina, I was curious, how can innovators look to support the transformation of our Canadian cities into smart and sustainable ones?
So innovation in technologies are really very, very important in order to make our cities smart and sustainable, but they are not efficient because at the end of the day, it all depends how people adopt them and what the widespread adoption of these technologies. And, technologies, usually new technologies, emerging technologies are usually expensive. In order to have a widespread in our communities, you need to target the deployment of these technologies and the way these technologies are designed to specific needs of the community. So I would say only a people, private and public partnership is the solution. So this means we need the marriage of top-down approaches, such as policies in the form of incentives and subsidies. And at the same time, we need bottom-up approaches. So we need community involvement in order to understand the end users' needs and the diverse needs of the society.
Again, bringing that transdisciplinary aspect again.
Exactly.
Too, right? Well, thank you, Lina, so much for joining me and sharing more about the amazing research that you're doing to make our cities smart and sustainable.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure.
You can find links in our episode description to learn more about Lina's research, the Urban Alliance, and transdisciplinary scholarship. And to find out how to move your research to impact in the UCalgary innovation ecosystem, visit ucalgary.ca/innovation.